Hi, thanks for tuning into Worldwide Changes, the news for all your history wonders. Today we will be discussing Dorothea Dix. Tabitha Knight is officially with former psychiatric nurse Penny Martinez, who studied Dorothea in her college years.
I'm Penny Martinez, and I'm continuing the report on Dorothea Dix. Hospitals for the mentally ill have made great strides in patient care since the time of Dorothea Dix. Today, psychiatric hospitals have replaced the crude treatments administered by the older lunatic asylums. Although there were earlier institutions that merely housed the insane, the arrival of institutionalization as a solution to the problem of madness was a significant event in the 19th century. In spite of institutionalization being a far better form of treatment for long-term care of the mentally ill patient, it created problems for the patient with deficits or disabilities. These patients had received better care than in the years before Dorothea Dix, but they were unintentionally deprived of independence and of responsibility to the point that living in the outside life was not an option. They were often unable to manage many of the demands outside life placed on them. By the mid-20th century, overcrowding in institutions, the failure of institutional treatment to cure most mental illness, and the discovery of mental health drugs prompted many hospitals to begin discharging patients in large numbers. Thus began the movement of deinstitutionalization. Due to deinstitutionalization, a greater number of people with mental disorders became homeless or went to prison. Widespread homelessness was a result in the United States and other countries. Even though some families were willing to help, the mentally ill person was sometimes resistant to such help due to the very nature of their conditions. Also, moves to the community living and services led to a variety of concerns and fears from both the individuals themselves and the members of the community. As many as one-fourth of individuals accessing community care services in the United States inner-city area are victims of at least one violent crime a year. Since the middle of the 20th century, the problems of institutionalization and the advent of deinstitutionalization has shown great strides in the improvement of care for the mentally disabled individual, with the increase in the number of community services now being provided. So thanks to people like Dorothea Dix, the treatment of the psychiatric patient has developed over time to become a less depressing and dehumanizing environment.
Can I help you?
Do you have any cough drops?
Try these.
Thanks.
Welcome back to Worldwide Changes. Dorothea had a very hard life as a child. She was the first child of Mary Dix and Joseph Dix. She was born in Hampton, Maine. She grew up with an abusive dad, Joseph, who drank severely, and with a mom, Mary, who was mentally unstable. Her dad was a preacher, but due to her mom's mentally unstable condition, she could not work.
But of course, the harsh times did not stop there. The British War of 1812 began to take over Hampton, Maine, but thankfully the family of three avoided the war and moved.
They moved to Vermont. Then they moved to Worcester, Massachusetts, where Dorothea's parents had two more children, Joseph and Charles. Soon after they were born, Dorothea took on the parent role for her two brothers.
Dorothea once announced that she never had a real childhood. She suffered abuse from her dad, but somehow managed to become a strong-minded woman. She was very independent.
Soon her mom, Mary, began having acute headaches, and her dad, Joseph, began drinking heavily from stress. This led to Dorothea, who was 12 at the time, and her two younger brothers, leaving to live with their 70-year-old grandmother, Madame Dix, in Boston.
Madame Dix was very wealthy, which was very different than what Dorothea and her two brothers were used to. At one point, her grandmother punished her severely when she was trying to give food and her new clothes to the beggar children who were standing at their front gate. At the age of 14, Madame Dix requested that her sister, who lived in Worcester, take care of Dorothea for a while and turn her into a lady.
Mrs. Duncan, Madam Dix's sister, agreed to this since she was always very fond of Dorothea. Once she arrived at her great-aunt's house, Dorothea immediately took on the role of a young lady so she could return to her brothers. However, she was to stay with her aunt for nearly 4 years.
During these times, Dorothea met her second cousin, Edward Banks. He took immediate interest in Dorothea and often talked to her about future plans. Dorothea told him that she planned on being a school teacher. He suggested that she start what was called a little day in school. He informed Dorothea that at the current time, girls were not permitted to attend public schools. However, young girls could be taught by other women privately.
Edward told Dorothea that if she was interested, he would help her get started by finding her students and a place in which to conduct the school. Edward located a store on Main Street in which Dorothea could hold her classes. In the fall of 1816, at age 15, she faced her first 20 pupils between the ages of 6 and 8. She ran this school of sorts for 3 years. All this time, Edward would continually visit her and keep her company.
When Dorothea was 18, Edward, who was 31, told her that he had fallen in love with her. Frightened and scared, she immediately closed her school and returned to the Dix mansion in Boston. However, this did not affect Edward.
He followed Dorothea to Boston and then proposed to her. Dorothea agreed but refused to set the final date for marriage. The true reasoning for Dorothea not agreeing to definite the marriage are the worries that they would become like her parents. Heavy drinking, emotional outbreaks, fights, and too many children to provide for.
Once Dorothea was back in Boston, she began reading her grandfather's books. He had received them as a student at Harvard University. She wanted to ask her grandmother to use the Dix mansion as a new school, but feared her reaction. However, one day she got the courage to write her grandmother a letter even though they lived under the same roof. She told her that she wanted to open a school for poor girls to get an education. In addition, she would open a separate classroom for wealthy girls, as they deserved an education too. Madam Dix was thrilled with her granddaughter's plans and agreed to them, much to Dorothea's surprise.
However, in the spring of 1821, Dorothea's father died in New Hampshire. At this time in her life, she knew that she was not supposed to marry Edward and returned his engagement ring. Her life from there on was devoted to teaching children and expanding her own horizons.
In 1836, Dorothea's grandmother became sick. Dorothea began taking care of her sick grandmother and continued teaching at her school. However, she became more and more drained and eventually had a complete breakdown and severe hemorrhages. Her condition was what is now called tuberculosis, but then they had no name for or treatment. Upon her doctor's urging, she gave up her school and took a long vacation set up at Dr. Channing to England. While she was gone, her grandmother and mother died within 2 days of each other. She stayed in England until January of 1841 when she returned to Boston in better health.
Dorothea's second career began when she was 39 years old. In March of 1841, she entered the East Cambridge jail. She had volunteered to teach a Sunday school class for women inmates. Upon entering the jail, she witnessed such horrible images that her life from that point on had changed forever. Within the cells of this jail, she observed prostitutes, drunks, criminals, and the mentally ill, all housed together in unheated, unfurnished, and foul-smelling quarters.
After witnessing these conditions, she immediately took the matter to the courts, and after a series of battles, finally won. Dorothea then proceeded to visit jails and asylums where the mentally ill were housed in other parts of Boston, and soon her investigations extended over the entire state of Massachusetts. She took careful note of her discoveries. She changed the life of many.
She traveled to England, Scotland, France, Austria, Italy, Greece, Turkey, Russia, Sweden, Denmark, Holland, Belgium, and Germany. And in a period of 1854 to 1856, she made an effective change in the way Europeans dealt with the mentally ill as she had in the United States.
Upon her return to the United States in 1856, She continued to travel and investigate many states that she had missed before. However, at the outbreak of the Civil War, she put her energies into being the superintendent of Union Army nurses.
Since her health was failing, she admitted herself into this hospital. However, with her decline, she remained in this hospital for a period of 6 years. Her death on July 17, 1887, ended a career that was unique in its worldwide amount of purpose and held great accomplishment. If it wasn't for Dorothea, the mentally ill and forgotten prisoners would be in terrible conditions.
She had no childhood, but grew up to be a very inspiring woman, which took time, strength, and dedication.
Yes, ma'am, it did. Thanks for tuning into Worldwide Changes. Tune in next week for more information.
It's Tabitha Night here with Alexa Martinez. Have a nice night.